that the Indiana Pacers are going towards a rebuild and that they're looking to trade some of their bigger players. Alright, everybody, welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. It's your boy Dom, and we can get right into things here today. So, today, we are talking about the Indiana Pacers, and more specifically, we're talking about them announcing, well, maybe not them specifically, but it being announced that the Indiana Pacers are going towards a rebuild, and that they're looking to trade some of their bigger players. Now, this is a team that is filled with a lot of good players on this roster. I mean, yeah, you can name off the top guys and everything like that, but, you know, there's guys even like a Jeremy Lamb, or there's guys just across this roster that are pretty decent. I mean, you have Torrey Craig, you have Justin Holiday, you have TJ McConnell, and all those guys are like bench players for them. So that's not even, you know, mentioning guys like Malcolm Brogdon and Chris Duarte and Carousel Levert, obviously, Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner. And I mean, yeah, this team's got a lot of good players, a lot of like true NBA caliber players, where some teams they don't quite have true NBA caliber players, while still being obviously very, you know, good or whatever. But sometimes you know, they'll have 6 or 7 guys that are pretty decent, and then after that it really trickles off, and it's like, I don't know. But the Pacers, I mean, it's like 12 guys deep of guys you're confident getting good minutes every game, and so it's interesting to see them move towards a rebuild. And the tweet yesterday from Shams Charania was, sources, the Indiana Pacers are moving toward a rebuild. Receptive to trade talks centered around Caris LeVert and either Domantas Sabonis or Miles Turner. So that's been a big thing as the years have gone on with the Sabonis-Turner thing. Is everybody's on one side of it, trade Turner, trade Sabonis, whatever. More people feel that Turner fits in a lot of other places, and I would be one of those people that agrees with that, where Turner is a lot easier to trade because he probably fits on half the teams in the league, if not every team in the league, unless they just have a better center than him, or a center they just brought in, or a nice young center they just got, or something like that. He fits on every other team in the league, though, because his game just translates seamlessly, I think, across, because he's able to shoot, because he's a shot blocker and all that stuff. But obviously, Domantas Sabonis is the better player. And so that's kind of been the dilemma for Indiana, and they haven't really made moves on that any time recently. And just this last offseason, it's kind of crazy to think that they're moving towards a rebuild, because they did kind of have that whole thing where maybe they would trade Brogdon for Ben Simmons or whatever, and then that kind of fizzled out as the Sixers quickly denied that. Maybe we see some more of those talks pop up now, that, you know, more of their guys are available or whatever. But yeah, I mean, this team in the offseason extended Malcolm Brogdon so that they can't trade him this year. They drafted with their first-round pick Chris Duarte, the oldest rookie in the draft, who's come in and been really solid for them. It's crazy to think about that he's like the same age as like a Jason Tatum and stuff, but just got into the league. So, you know, his ceiling isn't much higher than he is right now, but he came in and he's been a very, very solid player for them. Looked like he's contending for Rookie of the Year and stuff like that, and it's interesting to see them now move towards a rebuild. And so kind of some of the stuff that I was hearing was that a big reason that they're headed towards a rebuild is attendance. Now, I guess the GM or whatever, or somebody in the organization wanted to move towards a rebuild a little while ago, but that just was kind of shut down because they wanted to keep people in the stands or whatever. And now their attendance is so bad that it's like, you can't be boring, and I've heard this a lot in a couple videos that I watched to kind of just get more information on this. You can't be boring and mediocre. You can be one or the other, but you can't be both, right? And I think that speaks a lot to the Pacers situation, because they're both, and they've been both. Now, the whole TJ Warren turning into Michael Jordan for the bubble or whatever, and Chris Duarte being potential rookie of the year, and Miles Turner, trying to compete for defensive player of the year year in and year out, is interesting in a storyline aspect, but them playing on the court isn't the most interesting team to watch. In fact, it's one of the most boring teams to watch, right? Indiana's fundamental. They got the two big guys. You dump it into the post with Sabonis. You know what you're getting when you watch an Indiana game. And it's not like they're the Spurs or whatever, right? Who, now not at this point, but previously were a boring team with Tim Duncan, you could say. But they had a ton of ball movement. And they were a really good team because of some of the other perimeter players and stuff that they had around Duncan. And then obviously Duncan's greatness in his own right. But the Pacers don't have a Tim Duncan. Yeah, Domantas Sabonis is a good player and whatever. But they don't have a Tim Duncan. They don't have a Ginobili. They don't have a Tony Parker. All their guys are, you can almost say worse versions of that, right? With Sabonis being a much worse like Tim Duncan, or Brogdon being a much worse like Tony Parker, or whatever it may be, right? And that's just not going to win you a ton of games. And it hasn't won them a lot of games this year. Now, coming into the season, getting Rick Carlisle, bringing in an older rookie, extending Malcolm Brogdon, it seemed like, they would be in the playoffs, kind of in that race there to try and make the playoffs. But a team like the Washington Wizards really kind of pushed them out of that. And then the Cleveland Cavaliers have really made a big jump. The Charlotte Hornets have continued their success from last year. And the Chicago Bulls jumping to the top of the conference has really just pushed Indiana down. Now, they're pretty much the same level of rosters they were last year. But due to some of those surges in talent or just play from some of those other teams, it's pushed them down the ladder a lot. And now they're not even a 500 team. They're 10-16, 13th in the conference. Clearly not bottom two in the conference, as Orlando and Detroit are fighting for that top pick or whatever, with 4 wins and 5 wins respectively, I guess, for the two of them, clearly leading the whole NBA as the worst two teams. But the Pacers aren't quite in that category. Just, they're not going to make the playoffs at this point. They're not better than anybody above them, other than maybe the Raptors. I don't know. That's a close one. But the Raptors are 11-13, which is a one win better, but a substantially better record, because that's one win better and 3 less losses. And it's just interesting for Indiana because they have some stuff to kind of decide on. Obviously, in that tweet, they say either Sabonis or Turner. But I wonder if they get enough good offers for the two guys, if they're kind of like, okay, well, if we send Turner to X location and send Sabonis to Y location, the pieces we get would collectively be super, super good for us, and so maybe that's worth it for them. And I guess we'll have to kind of see how that ends up turning out. Now, maybe they have a huge, huge trade deadline and stuff like that, but I feel like they'll probably trade one guy, more than likely probably like Carousel Levert or one of the bigs, just one guy though, in the season, and then we kind of see them play the rest of it out and then go into next season, and maybe they make some more moves in the off season. But they seem like they're going to be pretty relaxed on it, even though they've pushed towards the rebuild. And now I kind of went out and drew up some trades myself for the situation. Now these aren't like set in stone, like super great trades. Now there's definitely some stuff that you could change around with them or whatever. But the first one I did was I said, all right, well, I said the Raptors, right? They're about the same level as the Pacers, but they've got a big log jam at power forward, and the Pacers have a log jam at center, because really I think Sabonis should play center. And then they've got Goga Batadze off the bench as well, and it's a whole thing, right? So I said, okay, well, what if you send Domantas Sabonis to the Pacers for Pascal Siakam? Now you have to throw in Jeremy Lamb to make the money work, and maybe a pick is thrown in, but Domantas Sabonis is making such a lesser contract, and they're pretty similar level of players. I'm not sure which side would throw in the pick. Now, I could definitely see a first-round pick getting thrown in this trade, whether it be from the Raptors or the Pacers. I don't know which side would throw in the pick, because there's, I feel like, in my opinion, such a similar caliber of player, right? Neither of them I don't think could be a number one on a championship team. Not either of them could be potentially a number two, but they're not like superstar players. They're just star players, and so it's hard to decide which side would really have to add more value to this. But it gives the Raptors a center, which they desperately need, and then it brings in a four that might be able to fit better alongside Miles Turner. And maybe, if you're only trading one guy during the season, this works out pretty well because you're still able to potentially try and push for the playoff spot. Interesting trade. I'm not sure if it would go down or whatever. Another one I drew up for Sabonis is him to Portland. Now, Portland's been in a lot of rumors, and I will probably be having a video on them coming out here pretty soon. But I said, all right, well, what if we send Domantas Sabonis to Portland, send Anthony Simons, and then you have to throw in Yusuf Nurkic to make the money work. And I called it 2 first-round picks, maybe just 1 first-round pick. I'm not sure, for Sabonis. And so what it does is it gives Indiana a young guard on Anthony Simons, right? And then potentially you can flip Nurkic away, because what is bringing him in really do for you? Nothing super positive. So maybe you can flip him away in like a 3-team or something. Maybe send him to like Charlotte or something, and let him be the big for them, and maybe try and make another contract with them as he's on the last year of his deal. And then you get, a pick or 2. And that's a decent return. That's why it's hard for me to be like, because Nurkic is a pretty good player, but he doesn't help the Pacers. It's hard to see if they need a pick or 2 here. And I think you would have to fully drop the 3-team trade to kind of see how that would work. But drawing up a 3-team trade, typically you're going to be pretty wrong. Now, I could have done that. But that's why I'm kind of just 1 or 2 picks for that, and then try and flip Nurkic for some other stuff there. And then I also did Miles Turner for the same package. Now, maybe Miles Turner only gets 1 pick there, and I think that makes more sense for him to only get 1 pick for that package. But in either case, the Trailblazers are a team that need to make something happen, right? They're not top of the conference. They're going to be in the playing game, it looks like right now. And there's frustration within the organization with, the head coach, Chauncey Billups. He's not happy with how things are going and everything like that. So maybe this is the move that they make. And for me, initially I thought, okay, well, we could send Sabonis, and that would, kind of give Dame a 1B and a 2B, a 2B and a 2A and a 2B in Sabonis and CJ McCollum next to Damian Lillard, who's by far the number 1 option there. But then I kind of sat there and I thought, and I was like, okay, well, what if you send Miles Turner? If you send Miles Turner over to the Trailblazers, maybe that helps a lot with your defensive deficiencies, right? He can kind of just be down there and be that rim protector for you that you need. And as we've seen across the league, I mean, when you look at the Utah Jazz, the reason they're so good defensively typically is because Rudy Gobert is the safety house, right? So even if the perimeter defenders aren't fantastic, which you would need a roster overhaul to really have that happen for the Blazers, even if the perimeter defenders aren't fantastic, having a guy that's going to be down there and threaten to block every single shot is a big thing and helps you just have better defense and recovery and stuff like that for your perimeter players. And Miles Turner is a guy that can block shots like that. Maybe not, obviously not the defender that Gobert is, as Gobert is one of the best defenders of all time, really. And now that might be a different conversation for a different day, but he could kind of provide that for them and then still have spacing on the offensive end and everything like that. So that was kind of an interesting thought for me. And personally, if I was the Blazers, I would target Turner. And now maybe a different package is devised, but this is kind of just what I came up with. But I think it would be interesting for them to bring him in and see if that could maybe help them do something there. Now, the next one I did actually is very interesting because the comments that I got on this was very against Indiana making this trade, which I thought that they were getting too much value in this personally. But I said, okay, Domantas Sabonis to the Warriors for James Wiseman, Nico Mannion, who's on a 2-way, and then Jonathan Kuminga. Now, I think James Wiseman obviously isn't probably going to thrive in the Warriors system, but I think sending him to another team would help him thrive a lot more, and we'll see how he is when he comes back from injury. Maybe second year he kind of makes a big time jump with the roster that they have now. But he was just a number 2 overall pick and everything like that not long ago. So you would be sending him over to the Warriors. Obviously, I think this would force you to, as the Pacers, potentially, move off Turner as well during the midseason, which is a little bit dicey on if they would. But then you also get a guy in Jonathan Kuminga who can be a super, super good defensive wing and has shown a lot of potential and would have more opportunity on a younger, maybe more rebuilding team in the Pacers, where he hasn't really had that on the Warriors, since the Warriors are one of the best teams in the league right now. And then Nico Manian, a guy that you can kind of take a flyer on, a guy that showed some potential, but is just not really all there and stuff like that. And so you take a flyer on him, maybe he gets a little bit of playing time for you, and you kind of see how that happens. And I thought this was a super great trade for the Pacers, because they're getting so much young talent. But I got a lot of negative responses on this. And then I thought Sabonis would work super well in the Warriors system, obviously. His passing and everything like that would just work super well. And then maybe him not being the defender that Turner is, having Draymond next to him would still help with stuff like that. And a lot of the other guys on this roster have shown good defensive upside. And so I thought it worked well for both teams. But it got a lot of negative response to it. So I'm not sure if maybe that's the trade that this team ends up going with. But it was something I kind of threw out there. And then I said Miles Turner to the Warriors for a similar package, but instead of Kuminga, who I thought at that point is way too much value for Turner, I swapped him out for Moody, their other first-round pick this last offseason. And another guy that can shoot it, and good defender, young guy that could go to the Pacers and make stuff happen. And it said, again, I got negative response to that, where I guess, Pacers fans just didn't think Turner is more valuable than that, when really, yes, he's a good defender and everything like that, and he can stretch the floor, but Wiseman almost averages the same stats as him at this point, and has a lot higher potential than him, so that's a lot of what I was thinking of there. But I got negative response to that, so interesting to think that Pacers fans really don't like Wiseman, apparently. So I'd be interested to see if that did end up happening, how their response would be to that. But then I kind of shifted away. I said, okay, I did some trades for the big guys. What would it look like for a Carousel Levert trade? And for a Carousel Levert trade, my first thought was the Cavs, right? Colin Sexton's been a guy that for years we've been like, okay, him and Darius Garland probably aren't a long-term thing. And if you make a move here, you send Colin Sexton, you send Cedi Osman, and you send Dylan Windler over to the Pacers. So the Pacers get a young scoring guard in Colin Sexton, who would fit well next to Brogdon, because Brogdon could take the major defensive assignment. And then even then, you could also put Colin Sexton on the bench for Duarte or whatever. And so that allows you flexibility there, and I think you would probably fit better on the Pacers. You bring in Cedi Osman, who would be a solid wing for you, and if Warren ends up leaving, because I believe he's on the last year of his contract, you could kind of fill that spot. He's nothing too special. Him being in the picture with all the great small forwards like LeBron and Kawhi and KD and all that is still funny to me. He's not the Cavs' next LeBron, as for some reason I guess they thought he might have been. But he's a solid enough shooter and stuff. And then Dylan Windler's a guy with some potential, a decent shooter. And then Carousel Levert to the Cavs, right? I think what the Pacers get there is pretty understandable. But Carousel Levert to the Cavs, what it does for you is it brings you that secondary scorer on the perimeter next to Darius Garland. It kind of takes away, hopefully, some of those defensive flaws that they might have on the perimeter, although their defensive front down low is super, super strong with Mobley and Allen. But then it allows you to maybe play Okoro or Levert at the 3 or whatever, if you don't want to be starting Markkanen, if you want to get a little bit smaller there, and not have those defensive flaws that you might have when you play Colin Sexton or whatnot. Because we've seen that it works a lot better when they have Rubio next to Darius Garland, which obviously is not a long-term thing, as Rubio is like 31, 32 or something at this point, and is on a 1-year contract. And is probably going to want to go to like a contender or something like that. But he's helped this team. And I think you can see what it does to have that secondary playmaker and stuff like that in the starting lineup next to Darius Garland that doesn't provide all that defensive scare that Colin Sexton does. And I think Carousel Levert provides that for them. It would be super interesting to add to this young core, as he would like fit their timeline and stuff like that and just be super solid for them. Then the next thing, obviously, the Mavericks have to be thrown in when you're talking about bringing in a perimeter ball handler. So that's where I have Carousel Levert going in the next one. I was a bit iffy on... I'm a bit conflicted on Carousel Levert's value. Also, like in the last trade, I'm conflicted on Colin Sexton's value. So maybe there was a first involved in that trade as well. But in this one, I think probably a first gets added. Initially, the trade I drew up was Maxi Kleber, Jalen Brunson, and Josh Green to the Pacers, and then Carousel Trade to the Mavs. Gives you 2 young guys, and then a stretch 4 that if you ended up trading one of the bigs, he would fit well next to either of them. But I was kind of like, it's not a ton of value, so they probably throw in a first-round pick as well. But again, gives the Mavericks a potential another ball handler on the perimeter next to Luka. Carousel Trade's definitely shown the potential that he can be that secondary ball handler on the perimeter and can really take that. Now, he's had a pretty rough time the last while for just in life. So, obviously, best wishes to him and everything like that. But I think he'd work super well next to Luka, and so that's kind of why I drew that up. Obviously, when you're talking about a perimeter ball handler, the Mavericks are always going to come into the conversation. And that really easily made the money work. So it's interesting to see how that trade could potentially go down if the Mavs really kind of pushed for it. And then the final one I kind of threw in here as a bit of a wild card. Now, they probably add another pick to this as well. But I said Caris LeVert to the Pelicans. And then Kira Lewis, Thomas Satoransky, and a 2023 Lakers first-round pick. I specifically said a 2023 because all the turmoil that they're going with this year, what is their roster going to look like next year? So I kind of threw that in there. But they probably throw in a Bucks pick as well or something like that for the future. Obviously, the Pelicans aren't going to trade their own pick with how bad they are right now. But they have a plethora of picks that they could kind of try and make this thing happen and give good value to the Pacers there. And then Kira Lewis, he could probably get some more opportunity there. Potentially an opportunity to start next to Brogdon or whatever in Indiana. And then Satoransky is really just an Indiana Pacers type of player. And he makes some money work and everything like that. So, bit of an interesting throw in there. I think it's more interesting. Now, the Pacers, obviously, I think you probably have to add another pick, like I said. So, it's more youth and pick value than anything. But from the Pelican side of things, it's super interesting because BI is really your only main perimeter creator. And then with Zion's injury and everything like that, you haven't been great this year. But if you bring in a guy like Caris LeVert, who really, at this point, would be maybe the 4th option on this team behind Zion, Valanciunas, and BI, it takes a lot of pressure off of him and stuff like that, and he can kind of just go out there and do things. And until Zion gets back, he can be your 2 or your 3 and your secondary perimeter guy, because Devontae Graham isn't maybe quite all that to be your secondary perimeter guy. So bringing in a guy like Caris LeVert could, be pretty solid for this team, and I'd be interested to see how that would work. I think he slots in super easily there at the 2, but it would kind of be like, okay, it works on paper. How does it work on the court? And a lot of these mock trades and stuff like that are like that. But this one kind of interested me, and I figured I'd throw it in here at the end. Obviously, with me having the Brandon Ingram trade video that did pretty well a couple weeks ago, I was interested. Okay, well, what if the Pelicans went the opposite way, and instead of getting rid of a guy like Ingram, they brought in a guy like Levert or something like that? So those are kind of the trades I drew up. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, where you think these guys could potentially go. But I'm super interested to see how this works out for the Pacers, and just how much this could shake up the league, because like I said, they've been a good team for the past few years. So them deciding that even if they're just going to retool or whatever, they're at least taking a year off of really competing for a playoff spot, more than likely. And that just gives more opportunity to some of these teams to really battle it out. And it's interesting to see, how high of a pick will the Pacers end up with for their own pick that, could potentially help them jumpstart this rebuild or quick retool or whatever. Or how much are they accidentally going to win with how many decent guys they have on the roster? I mean, could you see a lot of depth trades on this roster where, like, guys like Jeremy Lamb and Justin Holiday and TJ McConnell just kind of get sent other places because they're just solid NBA players that other teams and contenders would want for, a second or 2 or something like that, or maybe a young player that isn't getting playing time or something like that. So it's interesting to see. The Pacers situation is very, very interesting, and yeah, interesting, I guess, is my favorite word of the day. With that said, I hope you guys did enjoy. It's been your boy Dom, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace out, guys.